A Night from Alien, 1000 to 1250 BC. When I first entered the paradise of the mole, my body had nothing but a white silk garment. 2 white angels are holding me tall, until I slipped my hand. That meant you. Go, you good soul. Check yourself out what your Lord has prepared for you. I looked. Around me I'm amazed. At first glance, I saw a river running. It's like a river of milk. I looked at. On the other hand, palm trees are dripping in the best shape on earth. In a real temptation. I've read about these things. It's real. That's not a dream. I'm totally aware of what I see. I just feel like my brain is in a constant state of pleasurable numbness. But I am aware of a wonderful smell that has crept into my mind. I looked around me like it was the bug of the air. Himself. The air I breathe. Paradise is waiting for you supporters of the family of the messenger of God. O beloved of Ali, the paradise is there. Don't separate you. They have to pay for it. Something else slipped through my ears. Kind of a cheerful tune. I've never heard in my life. Song like this. I looked into the melody. There was something like a custom-made hallway. From the trees. That melody emanates from the inside with other sounds. There are people. Inside, it feels weird to be in the Garden of Eternity and discover a new place to move. His exploration. Knowing that what is inside of it is paradise. These words don't describe how I feel, but I'm trying to paint meaning. In my words, I stepped from that doorway feeling a sweet melody pulling me out of my neck. Praise God, and sanctify the other king, 2 great ancient gods the first, for their presence and the third. It was really fascinating, the first time I ever tasted the meaning of the word. Happiness. My soul was happy. Hi, you're having fun, you're getting happier. The fun is exponentially greater when I get into that place, and my ears get covered with tunes that become. Her voice is clear now, and I saw a lot of people I know. Brothers of faith. I see them. They lean on your opinions, and pretty girls lean next to them. They are more beautiful, which allows as playing with them and laughing with them. They were wearing light-colored dresses. 2 girls saw me entering this bliss, and they hurried. They approached me with the most beautiful smile I'd ever seen on a gap, and they extended their hands to me as a woman. I've never tasted it before. She graciously pulled me to join the happy crowd. Kill the caliph, even if you are killed. If you kill him, you enter paradise. And if you kill, you enter paradise. Also, you sat me on a couch. Then they kissed my hands softly. Please tell me I'm not dreaming. If I'm not dreaming, tell me I'm not drunk. And if I'm not, explain. Why do I feel like my brain's high? I didn't know heaven had bliss even in the brain. And the brain is full of intake, that great intake that you first tasted on. Earth Sheikh al-Jabal. The great imam.
Al-Hassan al-Saba.
And here I saw him get into this beautiful crowd himself. The great imam himself. Prestige. This man, I remember the young man that the imam told him to stand on the wall of a castle. Death. And he throws himself away. The young man immediately went up and threw himself over the wall of the castle. The imam had told him to do this so that he could see someone. The crusader visitors who visited him in his castle, how his followers would be loyal to him, even if calculate their lives. This guy must be playing around in some mole garden right now. He didn't understand. That crusader, why were we willing to kill ourselves in a good spirit? And if he had seen what I saw. Now to understand. Imam Hassan al-Adam said, the supporters of Allah, all this bliss you enjoy is minimal. Bliss your Lord has promised you, and on top of us comes nothing but. The martyrs are alone, and I come to you today to offer you one of the opportunities. Great for you to get. Martyrs believers. Who wants martyrs? Go. We all stood up, wanting to be the chosen one. If this bliss was so wonderful, so how much higher? I can't bear myself unless I get it. And luckily, he chose me. Forward this time. It was one of the opportunities that the Imam gave to those of us who loved from time to time, that we go down from heaven to the earthly life to end one of her great evils. Either we kill one of the Abbasid caliphs who are in fact the enemies of God and his messenger, as we learned. We kill one of the crusaders who is also the enemy of God and his messenger. Or maybe we kill one of the scholars. Those who spread poisonous ideas in people's minds are more dangerous to their faith than caliphs. But this time it wasn't a kill mission. It was a simple one. Very. I had to deliver a letter to King Amory of Jerusalem, the Crusader King of Jerusalem. How much?
I'm lucky.
I adore our imam whom our Lord has sent us so that he can take our hands to a road. Right. It is our right to have an imam, as everyone was a prophet in the past. It is our right. We have an imam who is protected by the community, who orders us, bestows upon us, and teaches us. In the name of God. It was actually a very long road. I was running in my original Persian towards Jerusalem, and I have about a month to reach, and the stars above my head are pointing me at the road. And many thoughts come and go to my memory. Thoughts make me feel proud. I remembered growing up in the great castle of death, how I was a poor lost orphan little boy, and he came out of the midst of the darkness of the night and caught me, and resided with me in his castle. I took it off. Me and so many homeless children. He gave us shelter. He gave us shelter. Give us more than that. We've taught everything since we were little kids. We've taught equestrian, fencing and riding, horses and fights with bare hands and daggers and spears. We taught shooting with arrows and daggers, and the spear. We taught manliness, endurance, patience, the intuitive speed of combat, sincerity. We taught the religion of Shiites. Shiite Ali, the Shiites of the house, taught us to be no feelings regarding the enemies of religion, the infidels, the worshippers of women, and their vultures, successors of the sons of Abbas and their companions. The imam used to feed us and give us the best restaurant and drink, and the most beautiful thing, he used to water us. The scent syrup, a drink that makes us lift our minds up above the minds of humans. A drink. I remembered the drink, and I reached out my hand on my journey and took it out. I drank it until my brain got wet. I was proud. I became a tough fighter. Loyal. Knowledge made me the most powerful thing in the world, and I wanted to be the most powerful thing. In the end. And I got to go to heaven, and I went to heaven. Great story I just remembered. Let me tell it to you as a time warmer. About 3 years ago, in a village near Nahawand, I kept riding. The Sultan, very carefully, since he set off from Isfahan, has a minister of. The ministers of the Abbasid Caliphate are called King's System, Seliasi of the Seljuk, who allowed. They have successors of the sons of Abbas to assume governing positions in the country. This was the regime of the king. This is my goal. This man has blocked the progress of our Nazi state and its lofty goals in destroying the Abbasid Caliphate. Suddenly the procession stopped, and I saw my goal come down from on his horse. And then the knees came down, all of them from their horses. The knees flew around the king's system, and he would talk to them about something, and they would listen to it with interest. Severe. It seems like my long-awaited chance has finally come. If I haven't done it now, I'll wait a long time before I can. I hid my chances and took off my cloak that was covering my clothes and head. The clothes I wore under the ABA were beggar's clothes, and I wiped the dirt on my hair and made it a piece of thistle. Then I felt my hidden dagger under my arms. I approached the knights with beggar steps as homeless. Here he was killed, sirs. In this village, many prophets' companions were alienated. Hello. Happy are those whose dwelling is here, and happy are those who have followed them wherever they are. Into level in paradise. This is Minister Snake. What does he know about Aline until he talks about it? They listen to him as if he's a prophet, and I go straight to this Minister Snake. And I made the humiliation and the taboos and told him, Sir, it shows you that you are so kind and good. Give me what you're good at, your good self. Please, sir. Give him nothing, sir. He looks like a healthy trickster. I'll give it. The messenger of God said, Give the poor even if he comes upon a horse. Also narrated by Jesus the son of Mary, saying, If the poor have the right to give him, even if he comes to you on a silver-encircled horse. He kept talking and looked at them until he got stabbed with my dagger. He fell silent after that and looked at me in amazement. Then some of his bodyguards were preoccupied with the minister's death. Some of them took their swords out to cut my head, but a word from the minister stopped them. He said before he died, "Do not kill my murderer, for I have forgiven him." I did not wait for a single moment. My humiliation and tranquility were quickly turned into turning and taking off. Quick, clever, I was sure they weren't aware of her, and if you'd be careful, I remembered these. The incident, and I remembered going back to Death Castell after that and celebrating with Alamam Hassan Sabami and for what I accomplished brilliantly. Then I slept that night and only woke up. 2 angels were holding my hands, guiding me into the eternal paradise. Now I understood the intent of the great imam when he said, "If you kill him, you will enter paradise, and if you are killed, you will also enter paradise." I reminisced as I journeyed to my destination, Jerusalem, to the palace of King Amalric, the Crusader King of Jerusalem at that time. I entered the Crusader King's presence and handed him the great imam's letter. It read, "To the great King Amalric, if this letter reaches you, know that I am one of your loyal supporters. I offer you an alliance to unite our forces against a common enemy that troubles both you and me, the oppressive, arrogant Abbasid state. My loyal followers are fully prepared to be at the service of your brave Templar leadership, provided that the annual tax of 12,000 gold coins imposed by the Templars on us, after my men killed Count de Tripoli, is abolished. Let this be the beginning of cooperation between us to eliminate our common enemy. May God grant us success." King Amalric agreed to the cooperation. It seemed the imam had one of his brilliant plans that never failed, for it was divinely inspired. This didn't concern me much. I was elated that my mission was successful. Upon returning to the imam, I would see one of the heavenly paradises I had always dreamed of ascending to. I mounted my horse and headed back to Alamut Castle, my mind filled with thoughts of bliss, melodies, and rivers of milk on whose banks the houris recline, and the fruits. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "I have heard that you are invincible, O Nizar Knights." I swiftly turned, reaching for my dagger. I saw a knight clad in a distinctive cloak adorned with a cross, a cloak that covered his body and head, riding a powerful horse draped with the same cross-emblazoned cloak. I recognized this attire well. He was a knight of the Templars. My combat instincts sharpened, and I eyed him warily. He spoke to me in an angry voice. "So, you think we need the help of a few knights made of paper like you? Has your foolish leader forgotten himself?" he said. I responded firmly, "Get out of here, you filthy crusader. Say one more word about our imam, and I'll make you choke on your own blood." The knight threw off his cloak and charged at me with his sword raised, his horse neighing fiercely. I jumped back, abandoning my horse to avoid his gleaming sword, spinning around as I did. In one swift motion, I threw off my cloak and drew my dagger, which I hurled unexpectedly. The dagger embedded itself in the neck of his horse, which reared in pain. The knight dismounted gracefully and stood ready before me. For the first time, I saw his face. He was one-eyed with harsh features like carved stone. He spoke in a chilling voice. "Tell your brothers in the hell I'm sending you to that it was Knight Gautier Maisnil who sent you, you scum." He rushed at me with his muscular body, raising his angry sword for the second time. I moved aside with precise timing to avoid his sword strike, rolling on the ground with practiced agility. I drew my sword from my belt and looked at him with determination. He looked at me with a mocking expression I didn't understand at first, but then I realized he was looking behind me. I quickly turned around to see 10 mocking eyes staring at me, their owners drawing swords from their sheaths. These weren't the eyes of ordinary men. They were the eyes of more Templar knights. I looked back at him in anger, but he didn't give me a chance. My glance backward was enough for him to close the distance between us, and in the moment I turned my gaze back to him, it was enough for him to grasp his sword and thrust it into my chest. I fell to my knees, and he raised his boot disdainfully, pushing the sword deeper into my chest until it protruded from my back. The moment you realize you are about to die is truly terrifying. You stop seeing anything around you because you are preoccupied with seeing something else. Initially, your entire life flashes before your eyes, every detail and person, in a presentation that lasts only a few seconds. Once the presentation ends and the curtain falls, you start to look around. Then you touch the place where you were stabbed. You feel a strange sensation, gathering your strength and deciding that you will not die. The blood and pain won't affect you. As long as you can breathe, you won't die. I remained kneeling. The knights were talking loudly and laughing. I raised my head to them. I will defeat death. Everyone who has died surrendered to it, but I won't. If you kill him, you will enter paradise, and if you are killed, you will also enter paradise. Paradise, the eternal paradise with the houris and rivers. I will enter it as the imam promised if they kill me. Then, I felt a tightness in my chest and a gripping pain in my heart. I coughed up blood. I gasped with all my might to breathe normally, but I couldn't. I tried with all my will to push away this weakness from my body, but I couldn't. I knew this was my end.
Evil die.
I will lie on my side on this ground and die. Indeed, I lay on my side and looked at the upside-down scene before me. Horse hooves, dust, an insect crawling on the ground. All these things will keep their lives while I will die. I heard the sound of the Templar Knights' horses as they walked away slowly. I looked towards them. The locals finally began to approach me. Finally, I hoped someone would save me. Some of them rushed to me, and one tried to slowly pull the sword from my body and succeeded. They then lifted me gently. I saw everyone gathered around me. I looked at their sympathetic Arab faces with a glazed gaze. How does it feel to see 100 people looking at you with pity as you die? But who is that man over there? Among the crowd, I saw him. He was black, walking slowly, looking at me with a stern gaze. I followed him with my eyes until he moved out of my line of sight. Behind me, people were holding my head now and then, patting it and reassuring me. Then they gently placed my head on the ground so I faced the sky. I saw their heads from a low angle. Then his head suddenly appeared among them, that black man. I was deceived, knowing full well I was deceived, but I was stubborn. I knew something was wrong. The great imam, paradise, killing Muslim scholars, making peace with the Crusaders, not praying, fasting, or performing Hajj because we had reached a level of closeness to God that exempted us from all obligations. He convinced us that we died and entered eternal paradise, then brought us back from death whenever he pleased, thinking we would believe him. I do not deny that things were confusing for me while in that supposed paradise. My mind wasn't in the right place. I always felt drunk or as if I were flying above people. The imam gave us all pleasures and women and relieved us of all duties. What a wonderful religion he preached. His religion matched our desires even if our minds didn't accept it, but we threw our minds behind our backs. There will be no paradise for me today. Instead, there will be a fire burning my soul. My God, just 1 hour. If only you could delay it so I could come to my senses, I would kill that imam with my own hands. Then the world went dark, and I felt as if my whole being was moving at an unnatural speed. I realized it wasn't darkness but something like a tunnel of darkness through which my soul was moving. Suddenly, I found myself emerging from the tunnel into the light of the earth again, seeing the same scene from a low angle, heads looking at me helplessly. Adjusted myself on my side, escaping the uncomfortable low angle that made everyone look like giants. This is better. The people were still. They talked with sorrow, looking at me or at the ground. But one of them approached me, an old man. There was a shadow of a mocking smile on his face. He kept coming closer until he was at my head. The shadow of the smile turned into a full mocking grin, revealing his few teeth and the few long hairs on his chin, and his eyes split like those of a snake. My eyes widened to their fullest, and I looked away. The light in the whole place dimmed as if a black cloud had obscured the sun. It's death. It's death, my God. It's death. I writhed on the ground, trying to hide my face, and the people around me kept adjusting my position, thinking they were helping me somehow. Say, there is no God but Allah. Something large passed before my eyes, and I looked everywhere in panic but couldn't find it. Oh night! Say, there is no God but Allah. The face of the old snake man appeared among the faces of the people, as if he was the only one illuminated. He stuck out his forked tongue at me. Who is this, my lord? Is he the angel of death? My God, please bring me back. Don't do this to me. I tried to scream with all my might, but it came out as a cough. Someone save me, or kill me. I don't want to see what I am about to see. Someone gouge out my eyes. Recite the Quran over me, maybe it will intercede for me. Do something. Certain muscles in my body started to spasm, forcing me into a particular position. My legs pressed together, my back arched slightly, and my neck twisted to the left. I felt an internal suffocation unrelated to my throat, a suffocation in my chest. I began to hear my heartbeat clearly. Then I saw him. No, I saw them. There were 3 of them. One was the black man I had seen moving among the people. The other 2 were also black like their brother, but the third was different in every way. I was seeing angels, real angels. Not like the human-like angels I saw in the paradise of Assassination. What a vile name. How I despise it. What happened next is beyond words and cannot be described. My soul was ripped from me as if a barbed spear was being pulled from wet wool. The 3 of them yanked it with strong, coarse hands. I sensed a foul stench from my soul, like that of a grave. My God, am I this wretched? The pain I felt was invisible to others. They only noticed my pulse stop and life leave my eyes. No one saw anything else. I watched as my soul was extracted from my body, surrounded by people, lifted by the angels, and placed in a tattered cloth. Then I saw myself rising swiftly until every trace of anything on earth vanished. They were replaced by other entities never before seen by human eyes. Entities that should never be known to humans. Unless they die. The remaining hours of my time in this world began to dwindle, and the ticking of the clock started to speak to me in a frightening manner. But there was still time left. That encounter was one of the rare confrontations recorded in history between the 2 most dangerous types of knights. The Knights Templar and the Assassins, the most dangerous of all Shia factions. This group had made the fortress of Alamut their main headquarters, along with 70 other fortresses in Persia, Iraq, and the Levant. If you had lived in those days and looked at the fortress of Alamut from any angle, you would have seen a legendary sight. The fortress seemed like a dwelling for jinn. It was a castle perched at an altitude of 6,000 feet, surrounded by clouds that intertwined with its towers. Its height was such that it was impossible for a catapult's projectile to reach it, and it was impossible for an army to ascend to it unless they climbed very narrow mountain paths, forcing them to march single file. It was a large fortress, not a single building but composed of dozens of buildings. It was the residence of Assassination, the founder of the Assassins. Inside the fortress, he designed a lush garden to which he would bring his followers. Assassination never left this fortress in his lifetime after he first took it over. He was never seen outside it, not even in the surrounding mountains. He spent most of his time inside, planning, studying, and experimenting with plants, of which he was an expert, especially the poisonous and narcotic kinds. He invented a very special narcotic mixture, which he would mix with wine in measured amounts and give to his followers to drink, causing them to lose their minds so he could control them as he wished. His power was such that there was even money minted with the name of the fortress of Alamut on it, signifying that he had created an independent community. His beliefs were highly deviant, the first of which was the doctrine of killing in the name of religion, which is, of course, a false doctrine. Killing in defense of religion is the noblest and most precious thing, but assassination in the name of religion is a crime. Read, O Dracula. 1450 BC. Read, O Dracula. My dear, come after me. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan, for he is a manifest foe. Dracula repeated after him in a bored, foreign accent. I looked at his face. I don't know why I don't feel comfortable with this boy. Pay attention here. What is your little mind wandering off to? Come on, repeat, and when he goes away, he strives throughout the land to cause corruption therein. It's bad to have Dracula as your brother. It's bad to sleep next to Dracula. It's bad to, and destroys crops and livestock. And Allah does not like corruption. Dracula continued to repeat the verses as the sheik read them. It was clear that Dracula hated the sheik. This was not surprising. My brother hated everyone. He hated me and this place and the Quran. Besides, this scene would make you raise your eyebrows in surprise and then lower them in mockery, thinking I was telling a comedic story. No, my friend. Here I am, Radu in flesh and blood, sitting in this mosque, and here is my brother Dracula in flesh and blood, sitting beside me, repeating Quranic verses while the sheik yells at him, all this foolishness starting to annoy him. Let me tell you the story from the beginning so your amazement will disappear. My father was the ruler of Wallachia, and the people of Wallachia called him Dracul, which means the dragon in Romanian. This was because my father was a founding member of a mysterious secret order of knights called the Order of the Dragon. My father placed this dragon symbol on the currency in Wallachia and on the military shields as well, so people commonly called him the dragon, Dracul or Dragul, as the locals in Wallachia pronounced it. Lord Dracul, it's a message from the Ottoman Sultan, sir. The problems have begun, and all our fault is that Wallachia is between the hammer of the Ottomans and the anvil of the Hungarians. They want to crush each other and in the process let Wallachia go to hell. Dracul read the Sultan's message with great interest. The Islamic State imposed a tribute on him to protect him from the Hungarians and required him to supply fighters if the Muslim army needed them. And they demanded a quick response and proof of loyalty. The proof my father chose was very strange. He sent me, Radu, and my older brother Dracula to Adrianople or Edirne, the stronghold of the Ottoman Sultan. Learn from your brother Radu. He has memorized 10 surahs so far, and you haven't memorized a single verse, Dracula. It was the strongest proof of loyalty. It's impossible to attack a state that has sent its dearest children to its sultan. We found ourselves, Dracula and I, at the age of 12, strangers in a strange land. Strange buildings, strange clothes, long turbans, beards, and palaces. My brother hated all this nonsense, and although the Muslim sultan cared for us greatly, teaching us horsemanship, combat, and all kinds of sciences, especially Islamic ones, Dracula was not happy. He felt he was just a prisoner and that these enemies were trying to force their teachings and culture on him, which he hated and couldn't digest. But for me, the situation was different. What is your name, you charming boy with the golden hair? My name is Radu, and you? I am Mehmet bin Murad, the Sultan's son. I didn't know I would spend my childhood with Mehmet bin Murad, the man who became known years later as Mehmet the Conqueror, the great knight who conquered Constantinople. Mehmet the Conqueror and I were close friends, and as my friendship with him grew stronger, our enmity with Dracula grew stronger. Dracula and Mehmet the Conqueror couldn't stand each other from childhood. Despite being forced to spend their childhood together, training and learning together. This was not strange at all. One was a true knight and the other a real devil. Come on, shoot your arrow, Radu. Shoot your arrow. I shot my arrow and hit the center of the circular target. My skill from a young age. I slapped my hand into Mehmet the Conqueror's and stood beside him, happy to have come close to his natural skill. Your turn, Dracula. Come on, shoot your arrow. Dracula aimed his arrow at the circular target, then suddenly turned his bow towards me and Mehmet the Conqueror. He looked at us with malice. My eyes widened in fear. What are you doing, Dracula? Have you gone mad? Dracula pulled his arrow and bow aimed at us, then suddenly released it. He didn't shoot it towards me. He turned it at the last second towards the target, and hit the bullseye exactly. I felt he wished that this target was the heart of Mehmet the Conqueror, or perhaps my heart. 6 years passed like this. We grew up and became young men, and here we were, the three of us racing on our purebred Arabian horses with all our strength. Do you see how we look now? My appearance was very distinctive. I had very light golden hair, silky and long, descending below my shoulders, hair that the most beautiful girls in Edirne did not have, and a handsome face and a distinctive manly voice, while Dracula had black, curly hair. His hair also descended below his shoulders, but he had a large mustache that a falcon could perch on, as they say, and sharp eyes like the eyes of a falcon that would perch on his mustache. Mehmet the Conqueror had a small pointed beard, brown hair, a long nose, and eyes that shone with intelligence and chivalry. Then came the news that stirred all these slow scenes. My father Dracul suddenly died in Wallachia, a conspiracy orchestrated by the boyars, a term used for the nobility in our land, Wallachia. This news came upon us during one of the most occupied periods of the Ottoman state. We were preparing and planning to conquer the most fortified city at that time, Constantinople. And when I say we, I mean I had become a Muslim knight, but Dracula remained in his faith. Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror sent Dracula to Wallachia to become its ruler in place of his father, and to be, as his father was, a follower of the Ottoman Sultan and obey his commands. As for me, I chose to stay here. I chose to have the honor of participating in the great conquest of Constantinople. There was a great feast in Wallachia, a feast where the host was Count Dracula, and the guests were the top boyars, who ate until they were drunk and the food came out of their noses, a popular expression in Wallachia. Dracula asked them calmly, "Tell me, great nobles, how many rulers have ruled Wallachia throughout its history?" Some said 10 rulers, others said 12 rulers, maybe even 13 rulers. Dracula suddenly erupted with a devilish fury. "That's because you are traitors. You eat the flesh of the ruler before he completes 2 years of his rule. How many years have you decided to grant me, boyars?" In the next scene, the palace guards were attacking the boyars from all sides, beating some and killing others brutally, and Dracula wasn't watching from afar. He drew his sword and struck necks, its blade dripping red after each strike. Many of them remained alive. Dracula looked at them with wide, angry eyes and said, "Take them to the castle. Let them work shoulder to shoulder with the peasants in building it." Then he added with a meaningful tone, "And let them work on the northern side. The northern side of the castle is a cliff 1,000 feet high. Everyone Dracula sent there from the boyars died. Some died from hunger, others from exhaustion, and of course, he threw them all into the abyss. Then he launched a very harsh campaign against all the boyars living in the kingdom of Wallachia, including their women, children, and elders. It was an ethnic cleansing, wiping out every last boyar bloodline, down to the smallest blood vessel. Dracula's fangs began to show. On the other side, I was fighting in Constantinople. Mehmet the Conqueror was truly as history books describe him, a real mastermind. The cunning of knights is different from any other kind of cunning. It is pure cunning without malice. It was a historical epic, the details of which I cannot recount now, but we achieved our goal in the end. Constantinople became ours, becoming the capital of the great Islamic empire. You will conquer Constantinople. What a great leader its leader will be, and what a great army that army will be. Prince Mehmet said to me on the battlefield, looking at my head, "Radu, do you put henna on men's hair in Wallachia?" I grabbed my golden hair in surprise, then smiled in understanding, saying, "Actually, I used to apply henna to my sword, my lord, but it seems some of it got on my head. My head was drenched in the blood of our enemies, but my head was not important. What mattered was the news brought by the state's messenger. Wallachia had declared rebellion against the Sultan. Dracula had done it. He rebelled. Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror didn't want to spoil the joy of his victory with this news, so he remained silent. And I know Mehmet the Conqueror when he remains silent about such things. It seems the days ahead are saving new battles for us. Battles with close kin. But Dracula was doing something else in Wallachia. He had moved past merely showing his fangs and had begun to reveal his horns and claws. Let me take you to Wallachia so you can see for yourself. There are 5 men surrounding what appears to be a screaming man. They move violently as if doing something to him. They step back a bit, allowing you to see what they are doing. They have tied a rope to his right hand, another to his left, a third to his right foot, and a fourth to his left foot. The 2 biggest men hold him down while the other 3 step back. Do you see? They are tying the ends of the ropes to horses, and the man is screaming for help in a language you don't understand. Then they position the horses in the 4 directions pointed to by the man's outstretched arms and legs. They prick the horses, and they start to move slowly, lifting the man off the ground, screaming. The horses move and stop while the man is torn apart, crying. Then they whip the horses, causing them to bolt violently, tearing the man's limbs apart, each limb running with its horse. And here's another man being held by 2 muscular men who force him to kneel while he screams. Another man comes holding a long, pointed wooden stake and stabs him with it in his behind, a stab that does not kill. The man tries to escape to no avail. Then they tie his hands and legs in a certain way to the stake. 3 men work together to lift the stake and fix it in an opening, the ground. There is the man atop the stake as if he were sitting on it, and he is left in this condition until he dies. The problem is not dying from hunger and thirst. The problem is that the stake very slowly penetrates the man's insides without killing him, only torturing him with pain. Then the man dies when the stake pierces through and exits his body, or he dies from the pain or from his organs bursting. This stake that you see now is what became known as the impaler, the punishment that Dracula became infamous for in history books. It seems Dracula was fascinated by the impaling method, so he started to devise new and elaborate ways to use it. Sometimes he would insert the stake through a person's mouth and hang them upside down on the stake. Sometimes he would hang women from their privates. Sometimes he would insert it into their bellies. And sometimes he would insert it into the neck of an infant. My brother was either insane or truly a demon. His obsession with this method reached the point where it became the standard punishment for any mistake made by any member of the populace. If someone stole, he would be impaled. If someone lied, he would be impaled. If someone hit someone, both the attacker and the victim would be impaled. But it went even further than this. Let me take you to this scene. Dracula's castle. A place equipped with all kinds of torture devices that I will tell you about later if my memory serves me. Dracula's throne. He sits on it like a human devil, with food and a red drink that looks like wine in front of him. Beside him sits a Polish nobleman, eating with him. In front of them are many victims impaled on stakes, suffering in agony. Dracula seems to be thoroughly enjoying their screams, as if he were listening to sweet melodies. The Polish nobleman, on the other hand, has his hand over his nose, disgusted by the foul smell of some of the corpses that had died, decayed, and were left there by Dracula in their rotting state. Dracula turned to him and said, "What's wrong?" "My lord, I can't stand the stench of decay." Of course, here's the translation of the text into English. The ground. The man was lifted onto a taller stake than all the others displayed. The noble Polish man screamed until his screams turned into cries when they impaled him with the stake in his rear and lifted him up and secured him. Dracula looked at him, saying, "You are now on top, my dear friend, where the foul odors won't reach you." Then Dracula drank from the red cup in front of him, which you can see isn't wine from the way the liquid flows in it, but blood, fresh blood. The blood of his victims mixed with wine, his favorite drink, which he loved to sip on amidst the moans of the tortured ones, splayed out before him like sacrificial lambs, and the sound echoing in his ears like the song of the nightingale. He loved the way the liquid flowed from his lips to his chin. That was Dracula for you. He used to put people alive in cauldrons, and even ordered his men to cut them up with swords while they were still inside the cauldrons, screaming, "The lazy woman." Her hand was cut and nailed onto a separate stake to serve as a lesson for all women. He once called all the poor of the town, its elders and children, to a grand feast in a surprising move, and after the feast, he killed them all, because they were of no use. They were a burden to the state. Let me stop here with these miseries, because if I mention everything I know, it would fill a separate volume. In short, the world has never witnessed a deranged personality like this before or since, and the tragedy is, this deranged personality was my brother. It wasn't long before Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih was on his way to Wallachia, with an army filling the horizon, and I was by his side. On our way to Dracula, the army kept marching until it reached the Danube River, and we saw Dracula's soldiers on the opposite side. The Muslim emissaries entered the castle of the ruler Dracul in his castle, where he had removed all the stakes for a purpose of his own. "Peace be upon you, O ruler of Wallachia. We come from the Sultan with a letter stating, 'Remove your head coverings.'" The emissaries paused in astonishment. Dracul spoke angrily, "Remove your head covers, both of you. What are these silly long hats? It's an Ottoman tradition, O ruler. The greatness of our traditions is more important than your sour mood." "No problem. I'll keep them for you as you wish." He gestured to his mad henchmen, who swiftly surrounded the emissaries and firmly held their hats. Then, in an act of extreme cruelty and strangeness, they brought small, thin nails and nailed the emissaries' hats to their heads, piercing their skulls and making blood flow over their faces. Dracula said to them, "This is how your hats will remain on your heads forever. Go to Sultan Muhammad al-Fateh and tell him how Dracula has not forgotten the Ottoman traditions, especially those related to keeping hats on heads." The emissaries returned, their shocked faces covered in blood. They recounted what had happened to them to the Sultan, who became angrier than I had ever seen him in his life. The Sultan ordered a secret force of 20,000 men to penetrate the enemy's armies. Whatever. He equals 3 times the army of Dracula. And the leader of the army is a brave Muslim knight named Hamza, the best knights of the Sultan's army at that time. And it was the surprise that no one expected. The Sultan's army was defeated by a crushing defeat like no other. And we only saw Mehmed the Conqueror, standing with his horse on its hind legs. Then he starts with it like an arrow and we all follow him, with an army of 20,000 others filled with anger and lust for revenge. And here we are crossing the Danube. What glory we were in! The splendor of this religion. Memories of fighting in Constantinople have returned to me. To run with your horse among 20,000 Muslim knights left the world behind and only saw the testimony, which is something I cannot reach your imagination. An amazing command. And here we enter the city gates. And I felt an unnatural movement at the head of the army. And I was in the middle of the army. I saw the mass slowing down and heard voices that sounded like a sob at the front of the army. I did not understand what I was saying. The matter. Why did the men stop? I penetrated the ranks quickly until the image was clear to me. The image that made my eyes widen until they almost left their place and went far away in protest against this horror that you see. The army of the Sultan. But the Sultan himself stopped with all his courage. Look ahead. Do you not see what we see? It is a thick forest or 2 thick forests. A forest to the right of us, and a forest to the left of us. A forest whose trunks are wooden stakes. Their branches human hands and feet, alive and dead. Their leaves bodies impaled on stakes. Bodies from which their souls came out or did not come out. Bodies that look at us with their eyes and say Allah is greater. And the 2 forests had a voice of sighs and lamentations. And a voice that reminds Allah. It was the secret that Mehmed the Conqueror sent. The devil put them all on the stakes. 10,000 stakes to the right of us and 10,000 to the left of us. The tension in the army grew. Cries of lamentation could be heard, sometimes for families, sometimes for comrades, sometimes for fellow Muslims, and sometimes for humanity. Muhammad al-Fatih stood there, astonished, recalling his childhood with Dracula, that malicious child who used to spar with him day and night. Now he was no longer a child but had become a damned demon, antagonizing him as well. He looked at us, wondering how we both came from the same womb, raised by the same father. One of us became a Muslim knight, while the other turned into a devil incarnate. Muhammad al-Fatih gazed at his army. All the fervor within them had collapsed. For the first time in his life, he turned his horse around and said, "Today is not the day of our advance. But by the sanctity of these pure souls and by every drop of blood shed, we shall bring the head of this devil and place it on a stake in the center of Constantinople, to be pelted by its children with stones." The Muslim army turned back from whence they came. This time, the war was not against an ordinary ruler but against Dracula, the demon. It was impossible at that time for them to do what they did to the Muslims and escape unpunished. Muhammad al-Fatih prepared an army of 60,000 men, filled with horses, cannons, and rage. He appointed me to lead this army, saying, "Go, Radu, and bring me the head of your brother." The throne of Wallachia was not created for demons to mount it. It was created for you. I will bring it to you, my lord, before the blood of our martyrs in Wallachia dries. I set out at the head of 60,000 men towards Wallachia. This time, Dracula heard about our approach and our numbers. He did something strange. He left the capital of Wallachia and took the road to Bainak. Our army pursued him with anger. The strange thing was that he was burning grain stores and poisoning wells in every city he entered, leaving us without provisions. In those days, the armies were marching on an empty stomach, meaning she relied on the cities she entered for food. But this did not affect the men whose sustenance was their manhood and drink. We chased Dracula for a very long time, and engaged in several battles with his armies. We won 2 and lost in the 3rd. He was like a demon attacking in the dead of night, but we persisted until we besieged him completely in his castle in Biner, and I, with all my men behind me, went to smash the doors of his castle with the hooves of our horses, and I dismounted from my horse and drew my sword from its scabbard and began to search for the head of the demon. Dracula said to me, standing in the courtyard of his palace, "You betrayed the oath, Radu, and let them put you in their long empty robes, didn't you?" No, my heart found a way it had been missing for years. A path whose end is your head. I raised my sword as knights raise their swords. But Dracula did the last thing I expected at that moment. He jumped into a well in the middle of the courtyard. I rushed to the well to look inside in anger to see Dracula looking back at me mockingly. Then he ran away down the well, determined to catch up with him. But I saw his men had come down below and lit a great fire that reached the top of the well, almost singeing my head. It was a secret tunnel from his tunnels, which it was truly known he had built in all his castles. Dracula escaped. He fled and left Wallachia to us. Dracula fled to Hungary to seek support from its king, but instead of providing him support, the king captured and imprisoned him in Hungary, and he remained imprisoned for many years. And I became the Prince of Wallachia, ruling it with justice and making the people of Wallachia forget all that Dracula had done to them. I ruled Wallachia for 9 full years, during which I married a Muslim woman and had a beautiful Muslim daughter named Maria. Then my time came, and I departed. Go to where your soul finds its rest. Those were the words my mother spoke before she passed away. And those who came after me to rule Wallachia found themselves facing a man who emerged from years of imprisonment in Hungary. A man known as the Devil, Dracula. For just 1 month, the Devil attempted to revive the legend of his rule in Wallachia. But that month ended with his head severed on the spears of one of the remaining Hashishin after Hawalko wiped out their state. The Hashishin who seized the head dipped it in honey, then sent it to Constantinople to Muhammad al-Fadi, fresh for him to spit on and the people to pelt with stones. Dracula's head, hanging in Constantinople in the Ottoman square, once with proud, arrogant eyes, now hollow, gazing down in humiliation. Dracula was insane. We heard he did strange things in his Hungarian prison. He would hunt insects and rodents, impale them on small branches, and take delight in watching them die. What a devil he was, or rather, what a madman. But he received his just deserts from us. We were created as knights to stop such as him in their tracks. We fear none but the wrath of our Creator. This is why we were created as knights, indeed why we were created as Muslims. The story of Dracula has indeed been greatly romanticized in popular culture, portraying him as a vampire rather than reflecting the reality of the historical figure. The real Dracula, Vlad III, was known for his brutal tactics, including impaling his enemies. The reason I shared this story is because Dracula succeeded his father in leading the Order of the Dragon, one of the secret societies established after the Knights Templar, focusing on preparing campaigns against the Ottoman Empire. These societies, though ostensibly advocating for unity, love, and equality, often had darker agendas. Dracula's father, Vlad II, eventually submitted to the Ottoman Sultan and sent his sons, including Dracula, as hostages. However, when Dracula became the head of the Masonic organization, it seemed as if the devil himself had taken charge. He orchestrated brutal campaigns against the Ottoman Empire, horrifying in their bloodshed. Yet, many European kings and religious leaders turned a blind eye to Dracula's atrocities, as long as he fought their enemies. The story of Muhammad al-Fadi, Radu, and Dracula has been portrayed in the Turkish series Fadi, narrating their journey from childhood to the conquest of Constantinople and the death of Muhammad al-Fadi. Despite this, let me tell you more about Freemasonry and my involvement in it. No one will tell you what I'm about to share, as I've ascended to the 21st degree. Although I know I will die soon, I am no longer afraid. I will give my life for what I am about to tell you, just as many before me have given theirs. However, I will differ from those who preceded me by leaving you a book you must read, memorize its details, and then burn to avoid meeting the same fate as mine. A newcomer to Freemasonry does not initially perceive any danger. On the contrary, they swear an oath on the holy book prevalent in their country. Muslims on the Quran, Christians on the Bible, and Jews on the Torah. However, upon reaching the 18th degree, the oath is exclusively on the Torah, and the symbols' meanings evolve from innocent to intermediate and eventually to purely Jewish symbols. Freemasonry does not accept just anyone. They select individuals with influence, be it political, religious, or economic. They have surveillance teams to monitor a potential candidate nominated by other Freemasons. These teams gather all possible information about the person. Their focus is on infiltrating the minds of the elite, those in positions of power and wealth, so they can execute their agendas through these influential individuals. Even after joining, candidates undergo various tests to qualify for higher degrees. In Freemasonry, there is no advancement without nomination from within a lodge. The first 3 degrees serve as a screening process to identify those suitable for further elevation, typically individuals with influence or positions of power. They look for those who have ambitions, desires, or vices such as a love for money, women, or power. These desires are fulfilled to facilitate their ascent within Freemasonry, with their ideas being reshaped at every level and degree. As they advance through the ranks and the meanings of the symbols change upon reaching the 33rd degree, referred to as the Supreme Degree, the Grand Master of the Lodge opens a register and says, "You, your father, and your ancestors will be honored to join the children of Israel. We now correct your lineage and record your name in the register of the 13th tribe of Israel. You will have the honor of contributing to this honorary tribe's great work, the great rebuilding, the great temple, Solomon's temple." Initially, they claim that the God they worship is the great architect, a vague term that might be interpreted as referring to God. However, in the advanced degrees beyond the 20th, this great architect is revealed to be Lucifer. By the way, don't think they worship the devil as something evil. Rather, they see him as the one who guided humanity to knowledge and taught them various skills like agriculture, trade, industry, and navigation. They believe that Lucifer enlightened humanity in all aspects of life, so naturally, worshipping him seems normal and not evil at all. They teach that when Lucifer advised Adam and Eve to eat the apple in the garden, it was because he loved them and wanted their good, not evil as religions claim. Gradually, you'll learn that God did not curse Lucifer but fought him because Lucifer wanted knowledge for humans, while God wanted them to remain ignorant. They teach that God's promises are false. You pray to him, and his response to your prayers is just luck. But when you worship Lucifer and wish for something, just wishing makes it immediately come true. He brings you into his paradise on earth, and you'll learn that the afterlife is just an illusion with no real existence. No heaven or hell or anything like that. That's what they taught me when I joined them. However, parts of me resisted all of this, especially when I learned the reason why they wanted to rebuild the temple. For that reason, I will delay revealing this until the appropriate moment. And if you saw Lucifer as they depict him in their drawings, as I have seen him, you would be amazed. I recall a full-length painting of the devil above his altar. He looked like a man of great intellect with a high forehead. When you look into his eyes, they give the impression of someone immensely knowledgeable and powerful. You can see this painting if you enter any satanic or Masonic organizations or their equivalents. But the Masonic organization and even this historical tale were still in their early stages. Their actions in the real world were merely initial, very slow steps because the Ottoman Empire was the ruler of the entire world. Its conquests in the East and West were unstoppable. If it had been left for another century, it would have conquered the entire world. The Freemasons would not have been able to build that sacred temple for which they had dedicated their lives because it would be built in Palestine, on the ruins of Al-Aqsa Mosque. If even a fly had tried to touch Al-Aqsa Mosque in those days, the Ottoman Empire would have slaughtered it without mercy. But we are still at the beginning. With me, you will learn patience until you achieve your goal and until I achieve mine. The next story, in particular, has a very large number of papers. I will show you one paper now, and the rest when the story ends. The paper is an Illuminati paper, and it has an image that might be familiar to you, a pyramid with an incomplete top and an eye above it radiating light. This story will be told to you by 2 people, a man and a woman. One of them is truthful and the other is a liar. I will tell you a small secret to help you distinguish the truthful one from the liar as you listen to them. The truthful one will be the one who dies before the other. Remember this well. And now I will leave you with them.